Title: From my office, I watched hidden camera footage as my cheating wife returned from a cruise with her sisters. Pouring wine, she calmly said, "I'm on antibiotics. One of the guys I slept with gave me gonorrhea." That was the moment I decided to unleash true Armageddon. The storm clouds outside my office window mirrored the chaos inside my head. Zurich's skyline stretched out before me, a canvas of glass and steel that once inspired ambition. Now it felt cold and lifeless, much like my marriage. I leaned back in my chair, my hand hovering over the mouse, hesitant to click play on the security footage from the living room camera. It wasn't paranoia that led me to install those cameras. Eliza had grown distant over the last year, her once warm and engaging presence replaced by a cool detachment. Late-night texts, whispered phone calls, and girls-only trips were the new norm. I'd tried to convince myself it was all innocent, that the strain of my demanding role as a managing partner at a private equity firm had simply driven a wedge between us. But deep down, I knew better. My hand trembled as I clicked play. The screen flickered, and there she was, Eliza, walking into the house with a careless grace that had once enchanted me. She carried a sleek designer bag, her skin glowing from a Mediterranean sun I hadn't shared with her. She poured herself a glass of red wine, sat at the marble kitchen island, and took a long, contemplative sip. Then she said it. "I'm on antibiotics. One of the guys I slept with gave me gonorrhea." My heart stopped. I rewound the footage, hoping I'd misheard. But there it was again, clear as day, spoken in the same calm, detached tone as if she were discussing the weather. The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a dagger. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. She had shattered the foundation of trust between us, and I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed. The next morning, I drove to my office in silence, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. By the time I arrived, I had already begun planning. Revenge wasn't just about justice, it was about precision, about unraveling someone so thoroughly that they couldn't recover. And in my world, the cutthroat world of finance, precision was my specialty. I started by compiling everything I knew about Eliza's life outside our marriage. Her closest confidants, her frequent haunts, even the names of her sisters who had accompanied her on the cruise. My assistant, Karina, discreet and fiercely loyal, had already flagged Eliza's recent transactions. As I sifted through the data, a picture began to form. Eliza hadn't been on a cruise with her sisters at all. The receipts pointed to a luxury resort in Mykonos, a haven for indulgent escapades. Flights, dinners, and spa treatments were all charged to an account she thought I wouldn't notice. And then there was the name, Nikolai Grigorenko, a freelance photographer with a penchant for photographing more than just landscapes. He'd appeared on her bank statements more than once, payments listed as private sessions. I leaned back in my chair, the edges of my vision blurring with fury. If Eliza wanted to play games, she'd chosen the wrong opponent. The days following Eliza's return from her sister's cruise felt like a foggy nightmare. I went through the motions of my life, morning meetings, high-stakes negotiations, dinner invitations, while my mind remained firmly fixated on the betrayal I had unearthed. But I needed more. A few clues weren't enough. If I was going to confront her, I needed irrefutable proof. I started by tracing her steps. The first breadcrumb was a receipt from a boutique resort in Mykonos, billed under an unfamiliar name, Nikolai Grigorenko. The resort was far from the modest accommodations Eliza had described when she returned, waxing poetic about bonding with her sisters over sunset cocktails. Nikolai's name lingered like a shadow in my mind. Who was he, and why did Eliza think I wouldn't notice? I called in a favor with an old friend, a cybersecurity expert who owed me a debt. With access to Eliza's email and social media accounts, the truth began to reveal itself in fragments, encrypted whispers of a life I didn't know. Her inbox contained flight itineraries, private messages, and a trail of correspondence with Nikolai. The tone of their exchanges made my stomach churn. Counting the days until I see you again. Last weekend was unforgettable. But the most damning piece came from Nikolai's social media. His carefully curated Instagram page showcased vibrant sunsets, expensive wine, and a tantalizing glimpse of Eliza's hand adorned with her emerald ring, the one I'd given her as a symbol of forever. The caption read, "Art is capturing the fleeting beauty of stolen moments." Stolen, indeed. I hired a private investigator next. He was meticulous, and within 72 hours, he delivered everything I needed. Pictures of Eliza and Nikolai laughing over dinner at a beachfront restaurant. Surveillance footage of them entering a luxury suite together late at night. It wasn't just an affair. It was a carefully orchestrated second life. As I sifted through the evidence, my anger turned to resolve. I would not confront her with mere accusations. I would confront her with the truth, the full, inescapable truth. And I would make sure she felt every ounce of the betrayal she had dealt me. Planning my revenge became my obsession. In my world, success required strategy, foresight, and execution, and I intended to use every skill I had honed over decades to dismantle the illusion Eliza had built. She had gambled on my ignorance. She had underestimated me. Step 1 was financial. I froze her access to all shared accounts, leaving just enough untouched for her not to notice the noose tightening. Every transfer to Nikolai, every frivolous expense, now hit a wall of rejection. I redirected the funds to a private trust, ensuring she would never touch another dime without my permission. Step 2 was social. I reached out to our inner circle, friends, colleagues, even her family, with subtle inquiries about her recent trip. No accusations, just innocuous questions that planted seeds of doubt. By the time I was finished, whispers about her loyalty began spreading like wildfire long before the confrontation. Step 3 was professional. Eliza thrived in Zurich's high society, her reputation as a charitable organizer and philanthropist giving her access to elite circles. I compiled a dossier of her indiscretions, her affair with Nikolai, her misuse of funds, even the lies she told her closest friends. I made sure it landed on the desks of key figures who had supported her ventures. Her carefully curated image was about to crumble. The final step was personal. I edited the footage and evidence into a single, devastating montage. It began with photos of her and Nikolai, progressed to the bank statements, and culminated in the surveillance footage of their late-night trysts. The video was concise yet thorough, a portrait of betrayal that left no room for denial. With everything in place, I set the stage for the confrontation. This wasn't just about exposing her lies, it was about reclaiming control. She had taken me for a fool, and I was about to show her just how wrong she was. The evening of the confrontation, I prepared the house with meticulous care. The lighting was soft, the table set for an intimate dinner. I wanted everything to feel normal, ordinary, until it wasn't. Eliza walked through the door, her heels clicking against the polished wood floor, her designer handbag swinging lightly at her side. "What's all this?" she asked, glancing at the wine I'd opened. Her tone was light, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Just a quiet night for the two of us," I replied smoothly. "It's been a while." She smiled, visibly relaxing, and took a seat at the table. For a moment, as we ate, I let myself remember the woman I had fallen in love with. The woman I thought I knew. But every laugh, every sip of wine, every glance she gave me now felt like a lie. Halfway through dinner, I set my fork down and leaned back in my chair. "Eliza," I began, my voice steady. "How was the cruise?" She paused, her wine glass halfway to her lips. "It was lovely," she said, a little too quickly. "The Amalfi Coast was stunning." "Really?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because I've been going over some details, and it seems like you spent most of your time in Mykonos." Her hand trembled slightly as she set the glass down. "What are you talking about?" I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play on the video. I set it on the table, turning it so she had a clear view of the screen. The first image appeared. Her and Nikolai at the beachfront restaurant, his arm draped casually over her shoulders. The video played on, each clip more damning than the last. By the time it ended, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. "Magnus," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I can explain." No, I interrupted, my tone icy. You can't. You lied to me, Eliza, repeatedly. You took everything I gave you, my trust, my love, my loyalty, and you threw it away. She reached for my hand, tears streaming down her face. Please, Magnus, it was a mistake. I was lonely, and you— Don't, I said, pulling my hand back. Don't you dare try to make this about me. I've been nothing but good to you, and this is how you repay me. She sobbed, pleading for forgiveness, but I had already made my decision. You have until the end of the week to pack your things, I said, rising from the table. After that, I don't want to see your face in this house again. Her cries followed me as I left the room, but I didn't look back. This was her doing, and she would have to live with the consequences. The fallout began the moment Eliza left the house, her face pale and tear-streaked as she climbed into her car. I watched from the window, the faint hum of the engine fading into the cold night air. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The evidence I had compiled was more than enough to destroy her socially and professionally. Over the next 48 hours, I set my plans into motion. The first domino fell when I anonymously sent the video montage to several influential figures in Zurich's elite circles, people who had funded Eliza's charity events, partnered with her on philanthropic ventures, and admired her pristine public image. Within hours, whispers turned into a storm. By the end of the week, her phone was inundated with calls and messages, some demanding explanations, others cutting ties entirely. The events she had organized were cancelled, sponsors pulling out without hesitation. She became a pariah overnight. But the true devastation came from an unexpected source. Nikolai, desperate to salvage his own reputation, turned on her. In an explosive post on social media, he claimed Eliza had coerced him into the affair, painting himself as a victim. The media pounced on the scandal, and her name became synonymous with betrayal and disgrace. When I heard that her family had disowned her, I felt a pang of something, pity perhaps, but it was fleeting. She had orchestrated her own downfall, and I had simply helped it along. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The house felt quieter, emptier, but not in an unwelcome way. I poured my energy into my work, reclaiming the focus I had lost during the chaos of our crumbling marriage. Deals closed, partnerships flourished, and my reputation as a relentless strategist only grew. One evening, as I returned home from the office, I found a letter waiting for me on the entryway table. The handwriting was unmistakable, Eliza's. I hesitated, the weight of her name stirring emotions I thought I'd buried. Finally, I opened it. Magnus, it began, you were right about everything. I betrayed you, and I've paid the price. I'm leaving Zurich for good. I hope, in time, you can remember the good years we had and forgive me for destroying them. The letter ended with a plea for understanding, but there was no return address. I set it aside, feeling nothing but relief. She was gone, and with her went the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. On a crisp autumn evening, as the golden hues of the setting sun bathed Zurich's skyline, I found myself at a charity gala, one of the largest events of the year. It was a world Eliza had once ruled, but now her absence was a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change. As I sipped my champagne, I noticed a familiar face across the room, Nikolai. He looked different, his once confident demeanor replaced by something hollow. He avoided my gaze, his shoulders hunched as he spoke to a minor socialite desperate for attention. I let a small smile curl at the corner of my lips. His fall had been swift, and unlike Eliza, he had no safety net. Magnus Adler, a voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find a woman standing beside me, her hand extended in greeting. She was striking, confident, poised, and with an air of intelligence that immediately intrigued me. I've heard a lot about you, she said, her smile warm but curious. Your work with the Adler Fund has been extraordinary. Thank you, I replied, shaking her hand. And you are? Isabella Marquez, she said, her eyes sparkling. I run the Marquez Foundation. I believe we may have some common interests. We spoke for the rest of the evening, her conversation a refreshing change from the shallow pleasantries I had grown accustomed to. As the night wore on, I realized something I hadn't felt in months, a sense of possibility. Later that night, as I returned home, I sat in my study, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal, the revenge, the fallout, it had all been necessary to reclaim my life. But now, standing at the precipice of a new chapter, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. I opened my notebook, the one I had used to document every step of my plan, and wrote one final line. Betrayal sharpens the mind, but renewal heals the soul. As I closed the book, I whispered into the stillness of the room. This is only the beginning. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Lauren's story. I've noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet. By subscribing, you're not just following a channel, you're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.